Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to Insurance for the Impossible, a Chubb conversation. We are joined today by Ivan Kusuma, Head of Investment and Insurance at Dana ID, and JP Ellis, Strategy and Digital Transformation Leader at Chubb. In a country where many remain uninsured, even though there is hypergrowth, right? Innovation in insurance is not just about products. It's also about trust and accessibility. Indonesia's digital economy continues to grow rapidly while creating new pathways to deliver protection to consumers and others, right? But can embedding contextual insurance products into a mobile wallet change how people think about financial security and just financial inclusion? In this episode of Insurance for the New Possible, we want to explore, can simple, accessible microinsurance offerings build trust through digital interactions? Will partnerships with global insurers help redefine customer experience and increase penetration? What will it take to move consumers from basic protection to long-term financial planning? Welcome to Insurance, the New Possible, guys. How are you both doing today?
Doing well.
Amazing.
Pleasure to be here.
Amazing.
Mike.
Happy to be here. Yeah.
It's great to have you both here. Okay, let's start with one really big question. How can embedding simple, bite-sized insurance into everyday digital experiences transform financial trust and inclusion for millions of Indonesians?
That's a very big question,
It's
Mike.
a really big question. Go for it.
So I think we should start with the nature of the Indonesian people, Mike.
Please do.
Yes, because in Indonesia, we see insurance as a complex product. It's not the product for everyone. And usually it has a higher premium and it's quite complex in the sense that not everybody can have this product. And usually the way you sell this product is through a push product. So it means an agent come to you and then somebody come to you and then offer this product like, hey GP, I have this product. Would you mind to buy this? And because I have a good relationship with GP, of course, I don't want to disappoint him. Eventually, I tend to buy, right? But this is not scalable because it depends on people. So we have to use a different method, and we use a digital approach for this one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I so resonate with that, and I think the part about like, oh, my friend's an agent and I don't want to disappoint him and, or her, right? And it's like, is a big point. But, if we look at like FMCG, right, in Indonesia, we look at the way like companies sell shampoo, right? Or they sell like little ketchup packets or something. Everything is like chunked up into these bite-sized little things, right? And of course that creates like immense plastic waste in like rivers, which is horrible, but it's like the chunking up of something big into something accessible and easy, right, is like, it's just so ingrained, right? And so I think, doing that for microtransactions, microinsurance, and insurance is not the only one, right? You also have that in investments. You also have that in, various things. But, it's very sort of aligned, and it removes barriers, frankly.
Okay, so what's the problem with the bite-size tickets? It's relatively very cheap, right? So from the point of view from the insurance company as the producers, until they can find a good channel, it's very hard to scale, right? Because if you have to depend on people to offer a very small premium, it will take forever actually to have a sizable numbers. So what in Dana like we do, we use our backbone as a digital wallet. We have a very good reach to more than 200 million registered users. That's amazing, right?
200 million, yeah.
Yeah, we have around 270,
two-thirds of the
280.
Indonesian population.
Exactly, right? So we have a scale and we have a very good reach to our users. And the users of Dana, they are not typically the one that live in the big cities. Of course they are, right? But those in the big cities, typically they are already covered by most institutional companies, banks. And we are there particularly for those the underserved in a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And those live on those areas, they have a very relatively low financial literacy. And if the price is too expensive, not a bite size, it's become a hindrance for them to try the product. So that's why we have to make it bite size, and we can leverage on the digital technology to offer to those underserved.
We'll talk about trust later in more detail. But getting 2/3 of any country's population, whether it's 5 million people or 270 or 300 million people, is just hard to do, right? And particularly in financial services, how did Dana build enough trust with people to be able to then get them to get 200 million people on the platform? Because trust is the key in financial services, right?
Yes, true. So of course, we're not that as big right now. We already big now because we have been from 2018 in the Indonesian market. So when we started small at the new company back then, of course, trust is everything. And in fact, trust is one of our keywords to the users. So when they use Dana apps, they have confidence in the apps. They can use it, and we offer some benefits. It's like a free transfer for certain people. And if we use this, it really helps them because Indonesian people, they need access for banking. And in some areas, they don't have banking presence there, right? But you still have the needs, obviously. So that's where digital wallet comes. And in Dana, you can use Dana for your daily needs, right? Like top up and then send money. That's a basic needs that most of people needs regardless of where they live in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, right? And when they use the apps, they feel happy with this. They get the trust, right? And the trust is accumulated. And when you have the trust, you often becoming a positive net promoter score, right?
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I would sell my bank to other people because if I was the only person being measured for NPS for the bank that I use in Thailand, I would give it the highest score possible.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I do trust them. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. So by having a trust on the apps, we'll expand more, not only serving the basic digital wallet capability, but also expanding to other financial services.
Yeah, makes sense.
Investment, insurance, and also lending. And in this topic, of course, insurance is a new possibility for us. In fact, we're already selling through embedded finance and also from a standalone products. And we have a good, successful number so far. But still, in a market where, like Indonesia, there's also a huge opportunity ahead.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the opportunity is just like incredibly large, right? And I think like on past episodes, we've talked about insurance participation, right? Measured by policies over GDP. Like Indonesia has just been like chronically low. And, we've done the math on this as well. Some of it is within associations, publicly available data. Some of it we just crunched ourselves, right? Sort of at face value, if you look at the industry, it's been kind of growing at GDP or GDP plus something over the past 10, 12 years. But in reality, if you look at digital, you just strip out and you look at the digital transactions, not so much on the currency value, but on the number of policies.
Right.
This thing is like growing like Bitcoin. So I looked at Bitcoin's long-term CAGR, right? So the CAGR, it's like whatever, 2014 to present, it's like 98% per year. And we're at like 95. So it's like 13x growth. We think there might have been anywhere from 2.5 to 3 billion with a B micro insurance transactions. So micro, nano, I mean, there's a million ways to slice these, issued last year alone, right? So the market is just moving at breakneck speed, and digital is the catalyst.
Interesting facts, as GP mentioned about the insurance penetration, a simple measure is of insurance penetration is total gross premium issued divided by the GDP, right? Indonesia is around 2% is for so many years. Compared to other countries, we are very much behind. And if you compare other Southeast Asia for comparisons, like Thailand, Malaysia, they are around 5% is. So it means we can go easily double, right? Easily.
And we're
easily
not at
double.
like, I think Singapore's 10, but of course you've got a lot of regional activity here. But it's not even saying Indonesia becomes Singapore from the perspective of insurance. It's just, can we catch up marginally to Thailand or to Vietnam? I think even the Philippines is slightly ahead if we look at the actual data. So, and digital is the key one there. Also, actually really interestingly, this is, I think, IMF data, insurance has a 2x GDP impact multiple in markets where penetration is under 5.
Because
it's a long tail knock-on effect, right? It's, stuff like, for example, I imagine a lot of the policies that are issued in the Dana platform are not only to individuals, but individuals who have a small business. And then it just becomes a knock-on effect. And so in a situation where Indonesia, like our current president of the administration, we want to grow at 8% per year. And we're currently like 5 point something. Every industry has to do its part. And, we think, growing digital insurance with a 2x impact multiple, definitely, it's a contributor.
Yeah, totally agree with JP. In Dana, in the last few years, we already offering the insurance as a bit-size product. So the way we make it the way we offer the product, it's not like we are pushing the products, but in fact we want to make the product is like a habit for the users, right? I mean, if the people is already familiar with Dana apps, they use it for a daily activities, then what we do is we are adding the insurance products in the payment page, right in the execution page. Like when they want to buy mobile top up, we ask them, do you want to have a screen protection for your phone? Right, that's interesting, right? When you want to purchase a food in a food stall in Indonesia, you use what we call it QRIS, right? The standard for Indonesian QR code. It's very convenient. Yeah. And when you pay with Dana, we also offer you, of course, it's an optional protection, a food poisoning. So you have an ease of mind. You know, when
Not
you
all food
purchase,
stalls are created equal, right?
yeah. When you purchase
I live
something,
in Thailand.
in the case you have a problem, then you can get insurance to cover you.
How do you balance this idea of, right? Because you want people to have protection, right? But how do you balance this idea of I just want to top up, and not make that do you want screen protection intrusive? Because this is tricky, right?
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
Okay, let me answer that.
Go
okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So we have to ensure that the insurance is relevant to the core transactions, right? Yeah. So, for example, like if you purchase mobile top up, obviously it has to be around the top up transactions. Yep. It's about the phone protection or the people that use it, right? But you cannot offer something really off, like offering your home protection, which is far, right? And it's no longer relevant. So we have to ensure that one, it is relevant, and the second, for not make insurance as intrusive, we have to ensure that it's not mandatory for them, obviously, right? Yep. You can always not to purchase, you untick, right, the offering, or you don't tick the offering if you don't want to, right? And we have a logic in our end to give you space. For example, if you keep rejecting the product, then we can personalize it for you. So we can change the product for something that we think better fit for you, or we can give space for some time before you get offered again.
And I was just going to say as well, there's also a trend to put some of the offers on 30-day periods. So if somebody has because if I'm transacting and say I'm like a small business merchant, whether I'm a food stall or I'm a trader, I'm doing a lot of activities in the Dana app.
Constantly here, yeah.
Constantly moving money, right?
Yeah.
Right? People are buying, selling,
right.
etc. It's like, do I want to tick that every single time? So there's another trend to just say, look, I get it every 30 days, right? But Ivan's point about making sure that it's not just like flogging the dead horse and like keeping, like, it's incredibly important. And I think that's the sort of one, I think, danger of the embedded insurance model. Obviously, it's really good because you can chop it up into bite-sized pieces. It's super relevant, but just having too many layering. And so you really have to, I think, totally resonate with what Ivan said, making sure it's relevant, making sure it's affordable, making sure it doesn't become too much.
In Indonesia, there's a survey from regulator. It's called the Financial Literacy Survey. So it measures on two components. The first one is financial literacy. The second one is financial inclusion.
Yeah.
The last survey showed that, one, the financial literacy is around 66%.
What does that mean? That 66% of the population
they're
understand
aware.
that.
At least they are aware, exposed of what is the product, right? They have some understanding of the product.
That's a lot.
And then
it's probably higher
it's
than
from the surveyed people.
Right?
People.
Yeah.
It's probably higher than it is in the United States. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe.
But interestingly, the financial inclusion is around 80%. So it means there's a gap, right? People purchase first before they exactly know
Yeah, exactly.
what they buy.
So that's the other question I was going to ask you. Is like, what kind of gaps were you trying to fill? Right, when you looked out at the insurance market, obviously a 2% participation, there are a lot of gaps to fill, but there's some bigger gaps than there are smaller gaps, right? What were some of those gaps that you were trying to fill? I'll go to you first.
Yeah, totally. Maybe before I address that specifically in an insurance context, just like Indonesia in general, right?
Go for it. We should explain to people though.
Yeah.
Like, how long have you been in Indonesia?
Baru 20 tahun.
Yeah,
Only
right.
20 years.
You can speak Bahasa very well.
Only 20 years, exactly.
joke-
but I think
I joke
people should know
only,
this so
yeah.
that they understand your perspective, yeah?
Yeah, like
Say it again, only 20 years?
Baru 20 tahun. Only.
Okay.
I actually got that from a taxi driver,
I'm sure you did.
coming home from the airport. I asked him, how long have you been driving this taxi? And he's like, only 35 years.
Right,
So now I
right,
joke,
right.
only. But
He's got a big runway.
yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
But yeah, no, I mean, the country has been so good to me. I've had so many great experiences. I've worked with super talented, wonderful colleagues and great partners, and Yvonne is definitely one of them. And I think the insurance question on digital insurance sits within a continuum, right? And if I reflect on like 15 years ago, when fintech was just starting, or 10 years ago, right? And the Dana CEO Vince was active when the industry was founded. We all were co-founders of sort of the umbrella association that overlooks this. And those numbers that Yvonne mentioned before, the literacy, the participation, the access numbers, I remember when they were like 40%, 45%.
And I would presume, sorry to interrupt you, keep the thought, but I would presume highly concentrated in Jakarta, in Bali, in Yogyakarta, like all in these places where they're kind of like big cities, yeah?
For sure.
Go ahead.
And I think when we talk about like the secondary, tertiary, even like the fourth order cities and communities, I mean, that's really the Indonesia of huge numbers, right? Like there's, I think, 65 million businesses in Indonesia. 99% of them are micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, right? And farmers are still out there, right? I think it's 95% of arable land is owned by single-family farmers, where it's less than 1 hectare, right? So you really have immediacy to those families. But so, I mean, look, technology came, like lots of things happened. Super apps happened, e-commerce happened, right? And you had all those numbers that Yvonne mentioned go up from 40, 50, 60. And now, I would say we're in a post-inclusion, right? So people have access. And
if 80% consider themselves financially included, that's a big number.
That's right. Yeah. And look, 3G, 4G is like 96, 97% of the nation is covered. So you have the Dana app installed, right? Or you have many other apps installed, right? Even the state-owned banks have wonderful apps, right? Which was not at all the case 10 years ago, right? So you're in this where people have access now, but then the key thing is, are they accessing it on a sophisticated basis? So the literacy part is just like, it's so critical now.
First, obviously, the trust gap. Myself, as part of Dana project, I have to go to the remote cities to really understand the people that we serve, right? Because if you are just sitting in the office, you just know the numbers, right? But we want to know who is the people behind these numbers, who are they, right? So when I went to the cities with the team, asked them, do you know what is insurance?
Right.
Do you know what is financial services? Do you know what is investment? They don't even understand the words of insurance. They even don't know what's the words of, what does it mean?
So
investment.
we talk about this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a serious, like, I don't want to say intellectual because that's not the right word, in an information bubble.
Yeah, totally.
Right? We're like, you can say to your brother or your sister or your kid or whatever, like, should you invest in the stock market or in the bond market? And they don't know what a stock or a bond is, but they know what an investment is because they've heard you speaking about it, right? But if you go to like a tier 3, tier 4 city, it's very likely they've never even heard that word before. Sorry, I interrupted you, but we should know that, and that's why going there is so important, right?
Yeah, so we have a trust gap there. So people doesn't even know what is the product, how to purchase it, what is it for,
Right?
right?
Why do I need this?
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. So like a continuous education is obviously needed, right? And again, if we go back on when we were before, in fact, some companies still doing now, selling the products to people, it's very hard to reach these people, right? In fact, they might not be forever be touched because I think in Indonesia, financial institution, they serve or maybe even overserve the big cities population.
Yeah, for sure, because it's easier.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
But for those that live quite far, then we have to use technology to reach them. And it can push down all the expenses, of course. When you use technology, it's much have a higher reach, relatively lower cost, right? So we can have like a constant education for them, teach them what is it for. Of course, in the first one message to message, they will ignore, right? But if you can craft it in a way, it's very simple, using a very plain language that they used to know in day to day, it will help, right? And second, the gap is on the affordability gap, right? Why? That's why there's a bite size. But in fact, we can even make a micro bite size, right? Because when people see things that they don't really understand, and the price is quite pricey, of course, they don't want to purchase, right? But if you make it affordable, maybe they'll try, right? Maybe they want to. Maybe they have some understanding. They want to try. They can experience. That's the most important thing. Experience it.
Yeah, look, I like to make analogies, right? I mean, if you've never been to an ice cream shop before, they have that little spoon there so you can taste like what Rocky Road is. Do you know what I mean? You're like, I don't know if I like that at all.
No, totally.
How's that different?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a vocabulary gap, right? Right. So, I mean, trust, like if we were to do this podcast in Japanese, right? I mean, like you could ask me, do you trust me or not? I just don't have the vocabulary, right? It's just like, so, and you know, it's funny, like when we've done, you know, I'm sure this resonates also, but, when we've done like focus group studies and ask about insurance and blah, 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 right? You know, people, sometimes it's, but when you phrase it in like different ways that are more simple and relatable, they're like, yeah. And the reality is, again, you know, like, for insurance penetration to be low in Indonesia, logically, there's one of two things. Either people don't understand it and it hasn't been made relevant in their context, or you are saying that Indonesian people are healthier, live longer lives, have less accidents.
Right.
And we've
never
crunched
dropped
all
their
those
phones.
numbers, and it's not true. Life expectancy is 68.3 years.
Right.
The global scam index is 3.63. Thailand is like 1.4. So, you know, 74% of flights are on time. So that indicates, you know, a good amount of them are not on time. Like, just like any other human population, they experience perils.
How does embedded insurance make it feel like it's just inevitable? Do you know what I mean? Like it's just a natural extension of everything they're doing. We talked about it a little bit before, right? But that's kind of embedded, but kind of not embedded, right? That's more like introduced in a way. But how does embedded from an Indonesian perspective make it feel like this is just a natural extension of what I'm doing?
Completely. So when we look at the current size of digital insurance, embedded, I mean, there's many ways to think about it. I think about it as within ecosystems versus insurers going direct. And obviously going direct is, you know, there's keywords, there's inventory, or there's PPM advertising, et cetera. It becomes expensive. So
PPM.
Or price per millions of like impressions and et cetera, right? So when we look at the total size of it today, 95% of the opportunity is within digital ecosystems. So it's embedded. And all of the models, when we look out, you know,
95%?
So all these, all those growth and policy numbers that I mentioned before, all of this is happening within digital ecosystems. So obviously there's fintech ecosystems, there's TMT ecosystems, there's e-commerce, mobility, like many types, right? But we struggle to see a future where that percentage does not kind of stay within a band. So in other words, if we think about the opportunity out to 2030, we think it's going to keep growing like gangbusters. It's already grown 13x, right, since 2020. We think 90% of the opportunity continues to be within ecosystems. So therefore, it is embedded, right? We think it's really about, you know, it's that vocabulary gap being closed. It's the value gap being closed as well. Because if I'm clicking on these things, like when I'm transferring money, or let's say I'm a trader, right? I'm a fabric, cloth, textile trader, you know, and I'm getting all this. If when I experience a peril, let's say my transaction doesn't go through or something happens, I expect a fast resolution of that claim. And if that doesn't happen, no matter what user experience or anything, like the trust is eroded. But if that does happen, now I'm aware. I understand the peril has happened and I received very timely payment. I'm ready to move up that value curve, right?
So that's what I was going to ask you. Have you seen, now that you've introduced all this stuff, right? Now that you have this massive user base and you slowly but surely are doing contextual but also embedded insurance, have you seen behavioral change? And in particular, and you don't, not just for this, but particularly for people that had never been involved in the insurance market before, right? Because you're right. If I don't know that I can protect a peril, when it happens to me, I'm just like, shogunai, that's just life, right? So I don't know there's no way I can disintermediate this. But once I realize like, oh, I've insured that peril and I got something in return for it, now what can I do?
Yeah, totally. And you know, I always joke, I say everybody in Indonesia is insured. They're just insured by their brother-in-law, and he doesn't know it because something happens, and it's like
people just lean on their parents,
exactly.
Mom.
But once they understand, oh, I can bump this risk up to the bigger pool, which is the whole function.
Yep.
Then that's the magical. So the magic actually happens when
brother-in-law,
right?
always.
So saving one family at a time, right?
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, there's a lot of cases in Indonesia. They're all in the headlines. You know, something happens to and then the family is really negatively impacted. I mean, that's just not fair. So we have to, you could almost think about it as digital is probably the most accessible tool to do that, and it frees up families, and that goes back to the GDP impact multiple as well.
So we see the same thing in Thailand, right? So just as an example, then I want to come to you and talk about this behavioral change. The guy that's doing Grab delivery or motorcycle delivery, or that's taking me from one place to another on a motorcycle taxi, his family bought that vehicle, right? So yeah, maybe it's not his brother-in-law, but maybe it's a big extended family was like, this guy can work, we're going to get you a bike, but if something happens to that bike, then they have big problems. So I experience that every day, so I completely understand that, yeah? But have you seen behavioral change where now that people are involved with microinsurance, they're interacting with it, they're getting peril protection, then they say, what else can I protect, right? Have you seen this kind of change?
I think there's a difference pattern behavior. That's people already purchase the insurance products. They tend to be more open for the another insurance products. That's true. Because I think, at least in Dana, the way we offer the product, we make the product is very transparent for the users. So they exactly know what they buy, what it covers, and the most important thing is how they can claim, right? Because if insurance product is being offered, you just buy promise, right, in the beginning, right?
Yeah, so this is really important though, right? So I was going to ask you earlier, but it seemed like kind of a lame question. I was going to ask you earlier, like, what's one of the really interesting things that surprise you when you go out into these tier 3 and tier 4 cities? And maybe the claim is the right thing, because if the literacy is lower than the participation rate, right? If it's 66% consider themselves financially literate, but 80% consider themselves included, there's a good 14% gap there, right? So they may not know how to get the claim.
Yes, that's true. Some people might buy it because they don't know, right? That's the undeniable facts. But in Dana, we want to ensure that they exactly know what they buy. Because in Dana, I mean, like, it's an apps, right? So all information must be there. And user attention to the one screen usually is just within seconds, right? So you need to be very transparent and make the product very simple. What you cover, what's the benefit, and they can make decision almost instantly, right? Whether to purchase or not. But then again, it's all about promise, right? As mentioned, right? And the moment of the truth of insurance product is when you perform a claim.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. This is a universally understood thing. It's where the rubber hits the road, yeah, we say?
And that's true. So in insurance, in Dana, when they want to claim, they need to have some information submitted to the insurance company, right? Obviously, right? So we make it very, very, very simple. Right, all information that we have in our apps, we don't ask in again to the users, so they just need to fill the gaps. So we make the process as seamless as possible. That's number one. And second, we ensure that we have a strong turnaround time with insurance company. And in fact, in some products, we have almost instant benefit compensation to the users.
Right. I wasn't going to go to parametric because it's not the topic for today, but you were going to say.
No, I mean, I was just going to add on. I think parametric is magic when it happens. Obviously, not every peril is at the moment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think another argument, another big, green check mark in the ecosystem column is there's a lot of data within these ecosystems.
Tons.
So you're much more likely to get to parametric outcomes. I'll give you an interesting example that's being talked about in Jakarta now. So we already mentioned that the president would like the country to grow at 8% per year.
It's a lot, yeah. Mathematically,
we need to do that so that we escape the middle income trap before 2045 when our demographics sort of turn. And that's incredibly challenging, right? So there's all these, as you can imagine, all the government apparatus, there's a lot of state-owned enterprises, everybody's focused on this. And it's known that agriculture is a huge sector in Indonesia. I think it's like 27% of GDP, right? And we already know it's small farm holdings, usually by families. So there's an idea going around, including with telcos, saying, is it possible to have parametric crop insurance for these smallhold farmers?
I mean, it's definitely possible.
It's possible, right? And it's fascinating to think about that because there's so many varieties, right? Like, is it around the, around the weather and the precipitation and around that is covering? Or is it the quality of the end product? Let's say it's chilies, let's say it's tomatoes, right? It's a fascinating subject to think about. And the extent that platforms can crack problems like these, now this is obviously a very specific example, is going to be sort of the rate at which Indonesia suddenly goes from underparticipated to like massively participated.
Totally agree. But in the case of, I mean, we don't deal with crops, right? Because in Dana, our users typically employees
Right.
or a new a new business owner, for example, like a merchants, right? So, but we get the context from Chubb, I think, and I think it's contextual is a new hot concept in Indonesia, I think. Because Indonesian people, we like something express, right? So exactly right. And not only Indonesian. In fact, the younger generation, they want something very fast.
They want it yesterday. So I was gonna ask you this too. Like, Indonesia still remains a pretty young country, right?
Yes.
But you're right. The demographics are obviously always changing. But how does the generational change that's taking place in Indonesia right now impact the way that insurance gets delivered to them?
They have better exposure to the digital, right? That's one.
Definitely than their parents.
Yeah.
for
So
sure,
they
almost by
used to
definition.
I mean, they use with the news in the social media, right? And social media is a very big influencer for them. So I think we can use that as a tool to educate those new younger generations, right? Not only using our traditional channel to educate, but also using those media. They also have a strong believers that feedback or comments from the peers is very powerful, right? So we also there's a word of mouth promotion from the people that try the product.
Right.
They try to claim, they feel that it's process seamless, they get compensated, they will be a promoter for us, right?
Right. There's got to be this great experience where like two people have a phone. One of them drops his phone and he goes, and his friend freaks out. He's like, "What are you gonna do?" And he's like, "I'm covered." And it's not his brother-in-law.
And it's not.
It's not. And this other guy's like, "What do you mean you're covered?" Right. This is a great way to sell
Yes.
insurance to people.
And then usually something like this, something innovative, not something totally new in the market, it's a relatively good reception. Because if they think that the product is okay, it's like too old-fashioned, something like that. Usually the younger generation, they may know it, but they don't buy it.
Right.
Yeah.
I sort of have an edgy view on this as well. I mean, I think, and I've been in Indonesia for 20 years, and I think only in the past couple, semesters, quarters, have we started to see anything outside of unbridled optimism. So there's been recent student demonstrations, riots in Jakarta in late August, and obviously lots of discussion about the shrinking middle class, and obviously play out, okay, growing at 8% by 2045, that's a good story. But play out if that doesn't happen. What it means is there's less pie. So I actually think with the younger generations, whether they're millennials, Gen Zs, whoever, through all the factors that Ivan said, right? Like they're on social media, right? News travels super fast, right? But there's also a recognition of maybe I won't have this huge 20-year swing of like incredible economic growth. Maybe things won't be as good for this generation. And I think the understanding of, people get sick and things have happened. And so if there is value created primarily through the claims experience, it should be good because you can understand like, hey man, like things are going to happen and maybe I'm not, going to be having as much opportunity as my parents did in the Reformation generation.
In the old days, the process to claim insurance is very, very long.
I was going to ask.
Yes, true, right? A lot of paperwork upfront, and then the underwriting process will take some time. And sometimes, in the end, it's bad news for the claimers, right?
Right, or it can't even get underwritten, right? So the whole process, yeah.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
So this kind of stigma sometimes stick on the older generations, right? But now, as we're moving towards a new younger generations, it's a fresh start for them, right? So if we can give them a right product for them with the right benefit and easy to claim, I think it will be a new potential of a new generations, right? And in Indonesia, we are entering the golden age, like JP mentioned, 2050. That's where the current generation will be at their peak performance.
2050.
2050 to 5.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's when the demographic swing.
bonus.
That's when we statistically become marginally old versus now we've been marginally young, right? And so the other way is we like a lot of
It's weird because it feels like a long way away.
Yeah,
but it's not.
But it's not,
It's
right?
not, yeah,
It's
it's
only a
25
few
years from now.
cycles, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it will be hopefully within my lifetime. I mean, certainly. Like,
Oh, it's definitely
would it
within
be
my
so
lifetime.
lovely?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So if we,
I'm not going away.
so the point is if we can include them now,
Yeah.
we start them with a bite-sized insurance. They get familiar with the products, and along the time when they grow economically, their life cycle change as well. They will have different needs of insurance products, and their openness with insurance will be different with the older generations, right? So we start with something simple, and we can go into something more comprehensive to the users.
I'm long-term super optimistic. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No. I was going to agree, but I was also going to say it's really important as well within these digital ecosystems that the end, consumer or the end small business is the beneficiary, right? Another side of this is we've seen really significant medical claims inflation in Indonesia, primarily medical, but not driven by individuals, driven by hospital groups, right? And so there's been some self-correcting actions there.
This is true globally.
It's true globally,
To be fair,
right?
yeah.
But I think within ecosystems, again, the amount of familiarity, data, like I open the Dana app like 3-4 times a day, right? It's like, it's constantly there. And consequently, it knows so much about me, right?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to GP becoming active in the user.
He's very good at this. Before I let you guys go, and I've asked other people this before, what is the craziest idea you believe is still worth pursuing in this space? Just an idea where you feel like, I'm going to have to get my boss to agree to this, and it may take some time, but I think we should definitely do this thing.
If only in Indonesia we have like national insurance report for everybody, I think that will be great. Because now the way I offer insurance is based on what I think I know, what we think the users know, right? So it's kind of like a forecasting, right? Because from of the user demography, from the user behavior, but we don't have like a clear data from any financial institution or one entity telling what is the historical products that this user ever purchased, what is the claim ratio, and what's already over insured and under insured, right? If we have this set of data, then we can have a better personalization in terms of offering, right? One is more accurate benefit, and second, I can share to GP as well. This guy is a very good insurance users, often buying, high retention, but relatively low claim ratio. So it means you can give these users different pricing with the others, right? And imagine from the point of users.
I like that you've thought about this.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
From the point of users, this will foster a strong believer of an insurance benefit, right? He can get covered more and more, a good coverage, and relatively with a lower premium. So it's like a good cycle.
Yeah, it's a
for the users.
virtuous cycle. It's really interesting though, right? First, you have to convince people to share that data. And again, this gets back to what we're talking about right at the beginning, this idea of trust. Because if I trust you, I'll give you all my data, particularly if I know it benefits me. A very interesting idea.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. It's, credit registries or credit bureaus, right? Your credit score. And, there's different apps in different markets. In North America, it's, Credit Karma, right? And the UK, it's Clear Score. But people actively work and optimize that because they know, okay, when I'm going to get credit to buy a house,
Yeah,
like
it's
my
better for me
mortgage,
to do
it's
this
better,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
And so extending that into insurance, I think is a massive win. Yeah, no, I totally resonate with that. For me, I think it's a combination of two things, the opportunity. I think it's something around optimizing the subscription stack, and I'll explain that in a moment, combined with agentic. So we did a couple focus groups, right? And the way, again, my sort of maybe North American mind, the way I think about it, it's like, okay, what are the insurance benefits? And then I think about the rewards afterwards, right? For example, you get access to telehealth, for example. It's not the first thing I think of. But actually, we've done focus groups where, you're, as we talked about the vocabulary gap, you're trying to explain the insurance benefits. And then you're like, oh, by the way, you can also, get some telemedicine, for example, right? And people are like, whoa, tell me about that. So what if you can actually flip the value proposition and you say, here's all the great things you can get. If you're sick, you're stressed, you need to dial in your nutrition, a family member just got diabetes, you need to think about how to deal with it. And those are only just a couple examples. And you're like, oh, by the way, we also cover perils as part of it, right? that's an interesting one. You sort of invert that value prop, right? And then obviously delivering it. I think Indonesians, and we see this through our social media usage, are incredibly social, information driven. And so creating like agentic based experiences where they can sort of just do that in a highly customized, individualized way will be key.
Awesome. Okay. Ivan Kusuma, Head of Investment and Insurance at Dana ID, and JB Ellis, Strategy and Digital Transformation at Chubb. Thank you both so much for coming to Insurance to Do Possible. You were both awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Super fun. Thank you.
Yeah.